Hi, I'm Mark, and I like to talk about British politics and, of course, still Brexit, because that is not even over, from an outside view. And that's also what I'm going to do today. A campaigner for Reform UK insults British Prime Minister Sunak with racist language. Sunak reacts indignantly, but his opponent and Reform leader Nigel Farage claims that that is all staged. The parliamentary elections will take place in Great Britain this week, and British Prime Minister Sunak and his party are facing a bitter defeat. And now he's also facing racist hostility. My two daughters have to see and hear people from the Reform UK who are campaigning for Nigel Farage calling me a damned Pakistani. Sunak, whose ancestors come from India, told journalists. "It hurts and makes me angry," said Sunak. "Farage has some questions to answer," he says. But what happened? An undercover reporter from Channel 4 had filmed Andrew Parker, that's a campaigner for Reform UK, saying that irregular migrants should be used as a target. Armed army recruits should be sent to simply shoot the migrants landing on the beaches, as Parker said. He also made racist comments about Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Another campaign employee described the LGBT flag as degenerate. The party said it had severed relations with the two men, and Farage said he was dismayed by the comments and called some of the expressions reprehensible. The appalling statements made by some in this exchange bear no relation to my own views, those of the vast majority of our supporters or Reform UK, he said in a statement. The incident occurred in the eastern English constituency of Clacton-on-Sea, where party leader Farage is running and has a good chance of being elected to the British Parliament for the first time after all these attempts. The campaigner apologized in an interview with the AP news agency. It was typical pub talk. He was not racist but incited, and Farage distanced himself from the statements. They would be vulgar, drunken and wrong, and the man was expelled from the party. A little later, however, the British right-wing populist wrote back. In a video that Farage posted on X, he tried to dismiss the incident as a pure staging. "The mainstream media are trying to smear us because they are afraid," he wrote in the post. Farage sees the increasing attacks on his party as proof that they are on the road to success. He then turns to the most unbelievable saga of the past 24 hours, as they said, the racist insults against Prime Minister Sunak, for which Farage had apologized shortly before, as I said. And the campaigner's comments and questions seemed so exaggerated and unbelievable to him that they reminded him of a comedy sketch from 50 years ago. The right-wing populist has an alleged discovery from his party as an explanation. The guy is an actor. It was discovered that Parker specializes in undercover films, among other things, according to Farage at least. It's like Netflix, he said. Parker confirmed that he is an actor. However, he volunteered for Reform UK because he believed in the party's message. The news channel Channel 4 News said it stands by its rigorous and properly impartial journalism. "We first met Mr. Parker at Reform UK's party headquarters, where he was promoting the Reform Party," as the channel said in a statement. "He was secretly filmed by an undercover investigator within the Reform UK campaign," as the channel said. No one was paid for the footage. Well, staged or not, this is not the first time that candidates and members of Reform UK, the former Brexit party, have attracted attention with racist, homophobic and right-wing extremist statements. The party of the right-wing populist and Trump ally Farage is taking a tough stance against migrants and is almost neck and neck with Sunak's Tories in the polls just days before the July 4th election. Farage himself is trying to focus the election debate on the issue of immigration, in particular the tens of thousands of people who try to cross the English Channel to Britain in small boats every year. The fight against the dangerous crossings has become an emotive political issue. His opponents have long accused Farage of stoking racist attitudes towards migrants. After 7 failed attempts to be elected to parliament, Farage is now making another attempt, and according to polls, he has a comfortable lead in the race for the seat in the seaside town of Clacton-on-Sea. Labour's resurgence is only part of the explanation for the foreseeable electoral disaster of the ruling Conservatives in Great Britain. Just as important is the resurgence of the right-wing populist opposition, reliably embodied for over 10 years by Nigel Farage. And Farage's party Reform UK is polling at around 15% on average. No other party has gained more since the start of the election campaign. And due to the British majority voting system, first past the post, this is unlikely to be enough for more than a handful of the 650 seats in the House of Commons. But Farage's rise could cost many Tory MPs votes and thus their mandates. The more feathers the Conservatives lose in this way, the easier it will be for Farage to present himself as the figurehead of a new right on the ruins of the Tories. After these elections, he sees himself as the leader of the opposition, if not in Parliament, then among the population. He wants to build a major national campaign movement across the country for real change over the next 5 years, as Farage said last week. And then, Prime Minister in 2029? Absolutely, he answered confidently. Farage makes no secret of his goal of destroying the Conservatives at the same time. For him, the Tories, Labour and Liberal Democrats are all part of the same corrupt, lying establishment. He describes his election campaign as a revolt and calls on the masses to join in. His party constantly reminds people that over 17.5 million Britons voted for Brexit in 2016. Now they can finally change the country too. Reform UK advocates more nationalisations than Labour and more deportations than the Conservatives. And there are popular ideas like zero income tax for health workers and oddities like a smartphone ban for under 16s. The changing political incarnations of Nigel Farage are stations on his path. Under the Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron in 2010, his United Kingdom Independence Party, or UKIP, campaigned so successfully for a referendum on British EU membership that Cameron felt compelled to promise this in the event of his re-election in 2015. After his victory in the Brexit referendum in 2016, Farage dropped UKIP, but when the country became hopelessly entangled in Brexit, he founded the Brexit Party as a new means of pressure. It won the British European elections in 2019 with over 30%, and the Conservatives got 9%. The Brexit Party then became Reform UK after Brexit was, well, officially completed, but it's not over yet. That didn't work at first, and Farage seemed worn out. But when Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced new elections for July 4th at the end of May, Farage announced a few days later that he would take over the party leadership and run for Parliament in Clacton in southeast England. He is considered a sure winner there. And so suddenly Farage is back. The Tories were not prepared for this at all. "Look who's back," he sings happily in a video that went viral. And he's the only one spreading good cheer in this election campaign. When a hapless Conservative defended the Sunak government's record in a recent TV debate, Farage only had to grin, and he had the audience laughing on his side. Labour politicians, on the other hand, never grin in this grim election campaign. It's by no means certain whether other Reform MPs will enter the House of Commons, but since the party attracts all kind of weirdos, it may be better for Nigel Farage to shine as a solo entertainer in Parliament. At his best, he's a gifted speaker, affable and eloquent, witty and direct. That does not protect him from himself. His recent comments that the West is to blame for Putin's attacks on Ukraine have exposed him as a Putin sympathizer. The rise of Reform UK in the polls now seems to have stopped for the time being. But Nigel Farage's ambitions seem unbroken. And if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.